In an earlier video, we had shown how you could use a query and some data validation to create drop-down menus that are dependent on the second drop-down menu is dependent on the first. So for instance, my first drop-down menu might be automobile expenses, and then I would see my choices of car payment, toll roads, all those things. If my first drop-down menu had been office expenses, this would not be in that list any longer, and you'd see this would work here. What I wanted to show in this video is that we could extend this out to multiple categories, and here's an example with 3 categories. So what we're doing here, we have our make, and with our autos, when we look at our data validation for autos, it's from the range this tab, 3 categories, all of column A. So if I were to add in here, if I were to add another model, like for instance Nissan, notice that when I come to autos, it's going to be a choice. So that's going to be dynamic. I don't have any Nissans in there. And then what I've done is for all of the Toyota makes, I'm just listing the models, Toyota Prius, Toyota Corolla, and so forth, Ford Rangers and Chevy Colorado, so forth. And then you have your models, and so for each of the models for the RAV4, we might have 3 different submodels, or what we might call trims. And we have those for probably all of the different varieties. And those are just lists. And then here, what we're doing is we're pulling the data that is selected on autos. So in A2, I've selected Toyota. You can see that I'm using that word Toyota. If this had been selected as a Chevy, notice it's going to break my model, and I would switch to a Colorado, and that's going to break my trim, so I would switch to LT. So both this and this are looking at whatever is selected from the autos tab. And then over here, we're doing a transpose query. And in this case, we're adding the if statement, because if we left the if statement off, we were getting errors on these as you dragged it down. But with the if statement, if E2 is blank, or in this case here, if E11 is blank, then we're going to, or if it's not blank, we will transpose this. Otherwise, we'll just leave the output blank. And it was getting an error because of all the empty rows that we had in here. So this is our list of models, and you can see when you list Chevy, you have Colorado and Silverado. When you list Toyota, you have the RAV4s. And then when you list the Colorado, your trims are over here. Your trims are the LT, the extra cab, the crew cab. If you choose Prius, you have these. So with our autos, I can come and choose a new auto. Let's say I choose a Chevy again. I choose a Colorado, and then I can see I have my LT, my extended cab. If I were to choose a Chevy Silverado, I have a different list. I have this Duraflex as a possibility. So again, we have 3 different drop-down menus. This model is dependent on the make, and then the trim is dependent on the model. Again, we're doing that with these queries, the transposing of the queries. So when we query A2 to B, that would be this data. When we're querying that data, we're selecting B, we're selecting the model where A is equal to the make. And so then we have the list of the models that are available, Colorado and Silverado. When you choose Toyota, you have all of these models. And then the same thing is extended out here, where we are extending it out to the submodels or the trims. So when you query C2 to D, that's this. and you select D, where C equals what is found in F2. So when you find the Colorado, the query outputs this. And then back over here, what we're doing on the Autos tab, if we take a look at this data validation, it's a list from a range. It's from that categories. It's Q2 to W2. Notice we're not locking the row, so I can drag that data validation down. And then when you look at the data validation from this row, it's Q3 to W3. So I can look here and say, okay, Q3 to W3, that's going to be those. This is going to be the first row because I've chosen the Chevy Colorado. So yes, you could extend this concept out and have multiple nested dependent drop-down menus.